In this course, I'm going to give you an introduction to SQL. So, structured query language, or SQL, as it's better known as, or SQL, is a special purpose programming language that differentiates it from other languages like C, C++, JavaScript, or Java, which are all general purpose programming languages. This means that SQL has a very particular purpose. And that purpose is to manipulate sets of data. Now, typically, we manipulate those sets of data from what we call a relational database. Typically because there are other kinds of databases or other kinds of data sources that we can use SQL against. And even if we can't use SQL directly against these other data sources, most query languages today have some relationship to SQL. And generally speaking, once you've learned SQL, it's pretty easy to pick up other query languages. Now, SQL has a number of standards. It's both an ANSI and an ISO standard. And this is only really important because that means that each relational database vendor has to implement at least the standard so that you can know that if you learn the SQL standard, you can apply that to many different databases. Most databases have some additional features that aren't part of the standard. And when you want to learn a particular database product, you'll have to pick up on those. But the basic standards-based SQL will always be the same. And so in this course, I'm going to stick to just teaching you the standards-based SQL. Now, I will pick a particular database product. It's a free one called MySQL, which I'll talk about how to set up and use in a later module. But I'm going to stick to just the standards. Now, we have a few terms that we should define before we continue on. One of those terms is a database. So what's a database? A database is really just a name that we give a container that helps us to organize data in some logical way. Now, by organizing that data in a logical way, we basically have a much more efficient way of storing the data and retrieving the data. So oftentimes in an enterprise, data will be stored in a spreadsheet. And there is some commonality between spreadsheets and databases. Spreadsheets contain rows and columns. Database tables, as we'll get into, also store data in rows and columns. But you wouldn't create a database just for the data in one spreadsheet. Think of a database as containing the data that might be contained in, say, 500 spreadsheets, right? A database should contain data that relates to a whole part of your business, right? So you might have a finance database, an HR database, a commerce database, right? Whatever the logical split is for your particular business, you're going to have a database for each one of those things. And there's lots of other considerations that go into how to design and spread out data across a database, which I'm not going to get into in this particular course. The idea is we want to put data in a database in such a way that makes it the one source of truth and makes it easy to query data, to add new data, to delete old unused data. That is the basic idea behind a database.